Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed. I'm Victoria Rose, and thanks for being with us. Voters in 8 states, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, New York, Nevada, and South Dakota, will decide on abortion-related ballot measures in November 2024. That's the most on record for a single year, and there still may be a few more states to add to that list, as initiatives are pending signature verification in 3 additional states, Arkansas, Montana, and Nebraska. Today, I'm joined by staff writer Nicole Fisher, who's on the ballot measures team here at Ballotpedia with me, to break down what we're seeing this year. Nicole, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is your first time on the podcast. Are you excited, nervous? I'm sure our producer, Frank, has really pumped you up for your first appearance.
It is. I've listened to it so many times, but I've never been on it, so it's great to be on here today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Nicole is our resident expert on abortion-related ballot measures. She sends out or writes up a promotion out every other week about this topic, which is going to be a hot topic this November. So let's tackle the recent news first. Both Arizona and Missouri certified ballot measures at the beginning of last week. We're recording this on Tuesday, August 20th for our listeners. Arizona is widely considered to be a swing state in this year's election, and having abortion on the ballot is sure to factor into turnout and other initiatives and contests as well. So what should people know about Arizona's initiative?
So Arizonans will be voting on Proposition 139. And this proposition would amend the Constitution to establish the fundamental right to abortion. So this measure was certified back in early August, and the campaign supporting the initiative, Arizona for Abortion Access, they said that they submitted the highest amount of signatures in the history of any initiative in Arizona. So to certify for the ballot, they needed 383,000 signatures, a little more than that. This campaign submitted a little more than 800,000 signatures, and out of these, 577,000 were found to be valid. So the amendment states that the state cannot interfere with the right to an abortion before the point of fetal viability, unless justified by a compelling state interest. So fetal viability is usually placed around 28 to 24 weeks. It depends. Roe v. Wade defined it as around 28 weeks, but could occur at 24 weeks. Modern day usually defines it as 24 weeks, but the measure defines it as in the view of a physician. In Arizona, abortion is legal for up to 15 weeks of pregnancy. And after the Dobbs decision in 2022, there was an 1864 law enacted that would prohibit abortion in most cases. And after Dobbs, this law became enforceable again, according to the Arizona Supreme Court. However, Governor Hobbs signed the repeal of the law back in early May. So in Arizona, the status is still that abortion is legal for up to 15 weeks of pregnancy. So as far as politically in Arizona, they have a Democratic governor and a Republican-controlled state legislature. And last presidential election, they had the second smallest margin of victory. So Joe Biden did win Arizona, but by about 0.3% of the vote. Georgia had the smallest margin, but Arizona had the second smallest margin. And for total state measures in Arizona, they'll be deciding about 13 statewide ballot measures. So 11 of these were referred to the ballot by the state legislature. So the state legislature is Republican controlled, so there are issues on the ballot such as border security. So those could potentially also influence turnout as well as this abortion measure.
And how are the campaigns shaping up?
Arizona for Abortion Access is the campaign supporting the initiative. So they raised about $23.1 million as of mid-July for campaign's finance reports. And the opposing campaign, It Goes Too Far, raised about $866,000. Governor Hobbs endorsed the abortion ballot measure. So Arizona will be an interesting state as far as the total abortion ballot measure landscape, but as well as other measures on the ballot.
And now let's turn our attention to Missouri. It's not necessarily considered as competitive generally as Arizona, but it currently has a Republican trifecta, and nearly 57% of the state went for Trump in the 2020 election. But it just had an abortion-related ballot measure qualify recently as well. So what does that initiative look like?
Yes, so this initiative also is a constitutional amendment to establish the right to reproductive freedom. So it's a little broader than the Arizona measure. So Arizona measure specifically targeted abortion. This one also includes prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, birth control, miscarriage care, and respectful birthing conditions. So the amendment covers all of those areas for the right to reproductive freedom. But similar to the Arizona amendment, it also provides for the state to regulate abortion after fetal viability. In Missouri, currently, abortion is banned with certain exceptions, which include saving the life of the pregnant woman or preventing serious risk to her health. And similar to Arizona, after the Dobbs ruling in 2022, that law went back into effect. And for those campaigns, we have Missourians for Constitutional Freedom, and they raised about $5.5 million as far as end of June campaign finance reports. And the opposing campaign raised about $198,000.
And does the Missouri amendment define fetal viability in the same way as the Arizona amendment, as up to the discretion of the medical professional, or does it provide a week cutoff?
All of these measures, when they define fetal viability, they almost all include in the view of the physician and view of the doctor.
Okay, got it. And big picture wise, there are 8 abortion-related measures, which is the most on record. I think it goes without saying that overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022 has a lot to do with the surge that we're seeing in the past few years. How does this year's slate of measures compare to what we saw in 2023 or even 2022?
So in 2022, after Dobbs, we saw 6 statewide ballot measures addressing abortion in 2022. And at the time, this was the most on record. In 2023, for the odd year election, we generally see less ballot measures, so we had 1 in Ohio. So in 2022, we had 1 citizen initiative in Michigan, and the 5 others were referred to by the state legislature. Keep in mind that to put a citizen initiative on the ballot, that takes about a year in advance to file the initiative. It's about a year of collecting signatures. So the Dobbs decision happened in about June of 2022. A lot of the initiatives that we are seeing now, as well as Ohio in 2023, we can definitely say are a response to the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade.
And then prior to Dobbs, were there any trends in the timeline for abortion-related ballot measures? I know we have on site the whole list of abortion-related ballot measures from Roe v. Wade on. Was there any decade that saw more measures than other decades?
Yes. So when we look at 2022, we saw the 6 measures. There were 3 that were considered pro-choice and 3 considered pro-life. If we look to 1973 after Roe v. Wade, we saw 44 measures on the ballot and up to 2021. So 40 of these were considered more pro-life initiatives or abortion measures, and 4 were considered more pro-choice. So in that period between Roe v. Wade and before Dobbs, we saw a lot more measures on the ballot that would be considered more pro-life measures. So as far as trends, around the late 70s and 80s, we saw about a dozen measures that would prohibit public funding for abortions. Around the 90s and 2000s, the trend was more when you had parental notification measures. So if a minor was attempting to receive an abortion, it would require notifying their parents. In the 2010s, we really saw a lot of legal personhood amendments or constitutional interpretation amendments. These would either define personhood as beginning at conception or amend the Constitution to define that nothing in the Constitution would provide the right to an abortion. So those are roughly the trends we see by decade. But then, of course, with the Dobbs decision, we saw several pro-choice measures added to the ballot, as well as citizen initiatives. So we're definitely seeing a lot more citizen initiatives that are pro-choice following the Dobbs decision.
And then as far as the remaining 6 states that are deciding on abortion-related ballot measures, is there anything that's standing out in particular to you, Nicole?
So we definitely have 2 measures in Florida and Nevada that are interesting. Florida and Nevada are also considered battleground states. The Florida amendment will also provide the right to an abortion before fetal viability. And the Nevada one does the same thing. So in Florida, abortion is banned at 6 weeks of pregnancy. Nevada, it's legal until about 24 weeks. The Florida measure is endorsed by President Biden, and it's opposed by Governor DeSantis. In the Nevada one, you have endorsed by Vice President Harris. Florida, I think we're seeing a lot of contributions coming in. So the campaign supporting it, Floridians Protecting Freedom, they raised about $42.5 million in contributions. The opposing campaigns, there's 5 total committees, and they collectively raised about $3.8 million opposing the initiative. Colorado and South Dakota also have measures on the ballot. constitutional amendments providing the right to an abortion. For Colorado, it's amending the Constitution. In South Dakota, they regulate it by trimester, so it provides that right within the first trimester. And then the next 2 trimesters, second and third, it'll regulate abortion in those trimesters.
And like I mentioned at the top of the episode, there are 3 initiatives pending certification in Arkansas, Montana, and Nebraska. What would those initiatives do?
Yes, so in Arkansas, the constitutional amendment that's proposed would prohibit laws restricting abortion access, either within 18 weeks of conception or in cases of rape, incest, fatal anomalies for the fetus, or to protect the life and health of the mother. Montana would also similarly have a constitutional amendment that would establish the right to an abortion. And Nebraska actually has 2 initiatives that are pending. One would establish the right to abortion after fetal viability, and the other would prohibit abortions after the first trimester, unless there's a medical emergency or in cases of rape or incest. So in this case, because you have 2 competing measures in Nebraska, and if both of them were to be approved by voters, the one receiving the most votes would go into law.
Nebraska is one of my states that I cover, so this is very interesting and fascinating to watch to see if both will make the ballot and then what voters will decide there. That's all the questions I have for you. I'm sure we're going to have you back on the podcast before November as more measures are certified and more money pours into these campaigns. But thank you for your time today, Nicole.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And for our listeners, you can learn more about our ballot measure coverage at the link in our show notes. We'll be back next week with another episode. Make sure you subscribe to On the Ballot wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Victoria Rose, and thanks for listening.